So I thought I'm going to go get my license, but I don't want to be a realtor. There's no way I want to be a realtor. And my dad was kind of excited too, because he kind of wanted to stop being a hairdresser and focus more. At this point, I had built a really nice portfolio. I was using his portfolio to fix it and help run in and show people what they can do. Unfortunately, before my first exam, 4 days before my first exam, my dad suddenly passed away. So he didn't get an opportunity to see me become a realtor, and we didn't have a chance to work together.
Welcome to the Real Freedom Show, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Real Freedom, Real Estate Leverage Freedom, where we talk about different ways you can build time and financial freedom in the real estate space. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. If you want to get started on your real estate journey, check out our website, freedomthroughrealestate.com. We put all of our episodes on there, blog posts, content for you to figure out where you want your path to be inside of real estate. And as we know, it can change, it might move and adjust. And so that's why we're here to just tell great stories and share great examples with you to inspire you to take action inside of real estate. So today, super excited to share. We've got a guest north of the border. We've got David Cinelli here, brings a perfect mix of expertise, charisma, and real world insight to every conversation. One of Canada's top 1% of realtors, HGTV co-host, and trusted advisor with 20 years of experience. We'll probably talk a little bit about the brokerage side, a little bit about the investment side, and love to hear your story. So David, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mike. Really, really happy to be here.
Just get us started, a little bit about how you got into real estate, why you got into real estate, and we'll take the story from there.
How much time do we have? So, yeah, it's got a long story.
It's going to be part of a 10-part series.
Yeah, so. Exactly, right? Part one, exactly. Well, it started off, like, I guess I didn't really recognize what was going on in our family. Our family are immigrants from Italy, and they lived in Toronto basically our whole lives. And then I didn't realize my grandfather passed away when my dad was like 16 years old. And he bought his first investment property, I guess, when he was 20. And he realized like that's what he was doing, is he was leveraging properties and able to use them to build wealth. At the same time, he was a hairdresser, very much like the wealthy barber. If you guys heard of that, it's a very similar situation. Fast forward to myself, like for us, my dad just really wanted us to go to university. Both my brothers and I. My oldest brother, not so much. He's a hairdresser with my dad. But my middle brother, and I, like we went to school, did that. But my dad also focused on. He said we were both good hockey players. I ended up getting a scholarship to the States and in Wisconsin. And so I went to the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. I'm a goalie, a little bit of a knucklehead, I guess. And so our whole lives are basically, my dad was like, go to school. But I used to help my dad with all the rental properties when I was younger. Fast forward, after university, I had my degree, bounced around, did my MBA because I didn't really make it through pro hockey. So basically went back to school, got my MBA, and started to work as an analyst. And during that time, my brother and his wife gave me a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, I'm always amazed at people that haven't read this book because I love that book. It's really straightforward. He's like, again, I have an MBA and basically a business degree, 2 business degrees. And I felt that this book was way more helpful than any degrees I took in university, right? It just broke everything down. And I realized when I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad that my dad was the rich dad, right? Like he was the one that was the entrepreneur doing all that stuff. Didn't have any degrees. Again, he dropped out of high school, grade 9. And I remember when I got my first analyst job and I was making this money and I look at my paycheck and I'm like, go to my dad, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, and in Canada, I don't know if you guys realize how bad we get taxed in Canada. Like it is a ridiculous amount of taxes. And reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, they're basically saying, that's how you get some money back. You're able to leverage homes and it's passive income. So I went to my dad and he's like, oh, so now you want to learn basically how we really do this in the real world. Mm-hmm. So from that moment forward, so he helped me get into my first investment property, like I said, about 21, maybe 22 years ago, and still keep my analyst job. But throughout the years, I was buying and selling properties. And it's just funny because I didn't really get along with a lot of realtors. They were kind of screwing you over. They weren't really, it wasn't an industry in which, somebody like I wanted to get myself into because we had a lot of bad realtors. I have only bad experiences with realtors. So I was like, as much as I loved the industry, I didn't want to associate myself with that. Fast forward to 2014, I finally got packaged out from my job. I was able to help my wife and other people get into, become entrepreneurs. And my wife was, I think at this point, was on her first or second think it was like, actually, I think this is like this is still her first business. And she loved being an entrepreneur. But me having the analyst job, I had all the benefits. I thought, as long as when they start to walk people out, and one by one, I was a treasury analyst, they walked us all out one by one, and it was perfect timing. But I didn't want to associate myself with being a realtor. So I created a business, had a business plan, and it was called the Property Manager. I've been helping people identify what is an investment property, how to become an investment property. So between my financial planner and I, we were like, okay, so I gave him kind of my business idea, and he's like, we had 3 different models. You had to find it, to recognize what could become a business, an investment property, fix it, renovate it. Like whether you needed to take like a single family dwelling, make it into multiple units. How do we identify that as well? If you don't have the trades, we would bring that in, because I've been doing this at this point for 12 years. I had lots of connections doing that. And if you went with the first 2 programs, then we would run it for free for 6 months as the property manager. That's the run it part. So it was a great plan. We had put things in motion, but when I went to monetize it, I realized the glaring hole was the realtor. Like, as the realtor was the one that had all of the keys, like identifying the properties, what's been selling for, the searches, all that is. And back then, you remember, we didn't have all these great search engines like we had now. Like, you guys have Zillow, we have House Sigma, we have all these ones that are great now. We didn't have that back then. And a lot of the information wasn't accessible to the public, right? Where now it is. So I thought, I'm going to go get my license, but I don't want to be a realtor. There's no way I want to be a realtor. And my dad was kind of excited too, because he kind of wanted to stop being a hairdresser and focus more. At this point, I had built a really nice portfolio. I started to help. I was using his portfolio to fix it and help run in and show people what they can do. Unfortunately, before my first exam, 4 days before my first exam, my dad suddenly passed away. So he didn't get an opportunity to see me become a realtor, and we didn't have a chance to work together. But long story short, I passed my first exam with 100% without studying. I knew I didn't want to be a realtor. Second course, I helped teach the course, even though this realtor's been in the industry for 20 years. Again, and emphasized for me that maybe I don't want to be in this industry. Like, how can you be in this industry for 20 years? And somebody like myself who kind of does it part-time, let's call it, and I'm teaching you. Like, she would come to me and ask for am I doing the math problems correct? And then she would talk about renovations. I'd put up my hand and say, that's actually not correct. I had to keep correcting her. Finally, by the third time, the third exam rolled around, that's when you get your license. I came home to my wife and I was like, yeah, I think I'm supposed to be a realtor. She started laughing and she's like, well, it took you long enough. So I decided to embrace being a realtor. But the whole key was, I only want to be a realtor if I can make sure that people don't go through the same heartaches that I went through. I want to elevate your real estate experience. When you work with me, I give you lots of information. I help, I don't pressure people to work with me, and I never pressure people to purchase stuff. We present the facts and the figures, and I will help guide you, but I will never force you to do anything. And like I said, so technically I'm in the top 1.5% nationally. I always call because there's a little bit dip between, and I've been in that for the last 7-8 years, I believe. It's been the top 2, top 2 to 1.5% last 7-8 years. So yeah, that's kind of where we are right now.
It's funny because I talk with my kids about going to school, get a good education, all that kind of stuff. And then we always talk about, mom's a therapist, so she's got two master's degrees, and then I've got a bachelor's degree. But I said, the reality is I didn't need any degree to do what I'm doing in life,
Yeah.
And the funny thing was I was considering, so I was entrepreneurship and was going to add real estate as a major in college, and then decided not to because I figured I could go back and do that later and just get my license. And then I worked out of real estate for 10 years. So had I just done that, I'd have a 10-year head start on where I'm at today. So hindsight's 2020.
We didn't have that when I was our real estate college was like its own little college. Now it's part of our curriculum. Now they've added a few years, which is at Humber College here in Toronto, and it's one of the colleges. In the States, it's it's different. You guys have college, university, depending on the size. We have different, our trade schools, known as our colleges, right? So they've added a whole new program, which is great, and you can get your license as early as seen the fastest probably 8 months and usually takes up to 2 years, but yeah, I wish I would have known that too. But again, I had to go through the struggles of going through what I went through to realize I probably could be good at this. But yeah, I had no clue beforehand, right? I didn't want to be a salesy person, right? I never identified myself in sales, but I guess I've been pretty good at it. So I guess it's, as long as you don't see it as sales, that's why I think the problem with salespeople is they're always looking to pad their pocket. And like we look at it as like we're here to help, and if we get paid
Mhm.
along the way, that's how we like we identify us as having success. Is how many people have you helped, not how much money you make.
Yeah, and that's how I look at it too. I pride myself on not trying to sell anything to anybody. It's, here's a problem, here's a solution. If I
Mhm.
can help you with that solution, great. If not, no worries. You can find somebody else or maybe find a different solution. And so
Yeah.
I guess that's how I look at it as well. It's funny how that works. And to your point too, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I remember it was my optometrist in college that told me to read that book. And so that was the life-changing book for me too.
It's so funny how that one book, which is not a hard read, it just changes so many lives. And so the other day, for my MBA, they asked us to come in and like do some, talking for the graduating class. And there's a guy who's an entrepreneur. By the way, I would always recommend taking an entrepreneurship class. I took one during my MBA, and it was fantastic. It's probably my favorite course I've ever taken. And then I also got the juices flowing. And
Mhm.
he asked me, he's like, "Oh, anything kind of recommendations?" I said, "Well, and I told him like, well, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, thinking that all these younger generations probably have already heard of it." And he's like, looks at me, he goes, "What book is that?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a second. You're right. Like, you've taken an entrepreneurship class." Yeah, and they never mentioned that book. They're like, "No, that book is like, how old is it? Probably not 30 years old, something like that." And
Mhm.
it's like, that whole thing that was the mouse stole my cheese kind of situation where they hand it out like to HR people. It's got to be. I think it needs to be in curriculum for all business schools.
Mhm.
And it's because again, like the problem with, I would always say this. I say this to my kids. The problem with university is it's great, it helps you think, but it helps you think like an employee. Whereas that is the entrepreneurship class, the only one helps you think like a boss or like the head person, somebody who's training somebody to do that. And Rich Dad put it the same way. He goes, "Why build up the corporate ladder when you can own the ladders, right?" So I was like, that's a great way of looking at it. And again, when I looked at what my dad had accomplished without any even a grade 9 education, and seeing how he was able to do that. And let's be honest,
Mhm.
he was very smart in his own right. Just because he didn't have a degree doesn't mean he wasn't smart. I'm not saying that. I don't
Mhm.
like how people associate, like, with degrees with people that are smart. Because how many people have degrees that aren't very smart? Like, there's a
Yep.
lot of them, right? So,
Yep.
um, anyway, my point was like, I think it's like they literally should be teaching this to everybody. It's like, it should be part of the curriculum.
So I majored in entrepreneurship because the school that I was going to had a great program for it, but I still had to make peace with taking the risks, right? Like I was in my head, I was like, I need to learn how to think like an entrepreneur, but I'm not ready to do that yet. And a lot of my classmates, it was taking over the family business or they knew what they wanted to do. And I was like, I got to go find a job because I know I'm not going to be an entrepreneurship or be an entrepreneur yet.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And it took 20 years, 15 years after, or 15 years after I graduated to
Same.
finally go off on my own. But those lessons and principles were very helpful. But yeah, in hindsight, like that's, what I should have been doing. So,
Well, my dad, I don't know your dad, but my dad gave me shit one day. And I was like, I was an analyst. I was making, we're talking, early 2000s, like 2008, 2009, maybe. I was making 100 and some $1,000 a year. And my dad pulls me aside. He's like, "What are you doing?" "What do you mean? What am I doing?" He goes, "I didn't send you to school to be an employee. Like, what are you doing? You got to build a business." And I was looking at him like, "No, no." I'm like, "That's not why you go to school, Dad. You go to school because you teach other people. You can show other people that you know how to learn and you can follow the rules." And he just never
mhm.
got that concept. And it was like, so it's funny because again, it was very risky to move. Like, some people think the risk is, paying for university. That is like, if you get nowadays, like college is very expensive, very expensive. I get it. We were fortunate enough not to have, like with my scholarship to the States for hockey, I didn't, really pay for my education there. And then when I did my MBA, they actually, back in our day, this is probably how old I am. When I graduated my MBA in 2004, our program, which was a 1 year core, like 12 months straight, it was only $25,000, right? And
Mhm.
because I had such good, believe it or not, I was a student athlete, like I had really good grades, I was on the dean's list all the year. They knocked off $5,000 off it. So it only cost me $20,000. And my dad, because he didn't pay for my undergrad, where he paid for my brother's undergrad, said, "I will cover the cost if you go back to school." So I was one of those rare individuals that got out of university with very minimal debt, right? Like my
Mhm.
dad didn't help me like when I was in university. He didn't give us money. So, get a line of credit, and I had worked and passed. So I had some savings, but but nothing crazy. I think my line of credit was like $10,000 or $15,000. It wasn't in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and again,
Mhm.
I understand, I recognize that in today's market, I think with everybody being able to do things online and the ease of entering into the market and not having to have a brick and mortar business, there's lots of opportunity out there for for more people. And if you want to get education, great. It's like, I think it can help. But I would always keep an open mind too. If some people always say, if you just want to have an education too, if you love like accounting, if you love, if you want to work the corporate ladder, if you want this, I think it's great. But I also caution people that are getting a degree just to get a degree. And I'm like, you don't want to be in 100 or sometimes more thousands of dollars of debt. And if the job you're going for is only going to pay you like $35,000 a year, you're going to be in debt for a long time. Like, you might want to think about that, right? Like, and we're having a shortage here of trades. Our tradespeople are making way more money than anybody who has an MBA right now. Like, it's because there's not a lot of them, right? And they're always in demand. So I would caution people saying, like, if it's changed where you just get a degree just to get a degree to get your foot into any business. Now it's like, I think I'm like talking to my friend who's a CFO here at one of the large companies, and he's like, basically, if you don't have an MBA, we're not even looking at you for entry position. I'm like, an MBA? When I got my MBA, I was one of the few people that had that, and I was overqualified for all these jobs, and I never really had a big boy job, and it was like, because I had the MBA. Now it's like, that's your entry point. So it's changed a lot in the last 20 years. So yeah. That's why I think entrepreneurship is great. And also I love entrepreneurship because it makes you think, right? It makes you think outside the box. You're solving people's problems. If you can help solve people's problems, not only can you make money, that's great, that's the end of the day, but you're actually helping people. And that's very important. I think that is great for society. If you're actually helping people, again, you will be rewarded.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk a little bit about investment property, your journey there, how that was grown, and kind of how you help other people now think through buying property or things like that through the eyes of an investor, a future investor.
Yeah, great question, Mike. Great question. So as I mentioned, I bought my first property with my dad gave me the money, and he basically baptism by fire. He's like, it was an older, like over 100-year-old home, sixplex. They had done a shitty job inside. Like the plumbing was an issue. Everything. We had asbestos in the house. We had a boiler that wasn't working, leaks left and right. But it was one of those things. It was like it was great because I got to figure out who was in my network for plumbing and fixing. So during the process, I was frustrated for a couple of years. We bought it in 2005 and 2006. By 2008, I wanted to sell this thing. It just had problems and problems and problems. But then one of our contractors was talking about us, and even though my dad had done this for a long time, remember, he kind of stepped away, let me do my own thing, right? He didn't tell me how, and this is where the journey started. I thought investment properties, I'm going to my dad, and I'm like, I'm doing all this work for this house. I spent his money. I'm like, at the end of the year, I'm only making $10,000. He looked at me and goes, that's $10,000 more than you had beforehand. And plus, you're able to write off a lot of your expenses, right? And that's the huge part when it comes to tax time, right? Again, you're making over $100,000. You're in a higher tax bracket. You're over here. You're getting, we're in the 54%. Like that's how much it takes, over half of our money in taxes. So in order to mitigate that, like you have rental properties, you're able to use a lot of accounting, like, you're using you're able to use deterioration, amortization. You're able to write off a lot of the interest. And at tax time, I was getting refunds, and I'm like, this is interesting. But I absolutely didn't know how to utilize equity in the property yet until I talked with one of my contractors, because some of the apartments were kind of like shitty, right? They were falling apart. And out of the sixplex, so he's basically said, he goes, you can pull equity. I'm like, what is equity? Again, like I'm not to say that like it just, real estate wasn't an option for us when we talked about equity. We were talking about how to earn money. University is great, but no one ever taught us how to make money. I was a math major at one point. I can tell you anything. I can tell you slopes of lines. I can tell you any kind of derivatives, like those, but I didn't know simple things like equity. And he's like, Dave, it's simple. He goes, we look at the value of your property, and the bank will loan you 80% of that at this point. So if your property at this point is worth worth like say $800,000, 80% of that, they'll loan you up to 640. How much money do you have left on your mortgage? So you subtract that. And I was like, and I think there was only like $400,000 on that. So he goes, the bank will give you access on a HELOC, home equity line of credit, for that extra $240,000. And you can use that to build up the properties and to renovate the properties. And all the interest, you only pay for the money you use, and the interest, you can write it off towards your income. I was like, really? I didn't know about that. So that's what we did. We started doing that. And then a couple months later, we had an electrical fire in the property. So what happened was I think one of the tenants was fooling around with the electrical panel. We had to kick everybody out. At that point, I was able to revamp the whole house. So all the issues we had plumbing issues, like no water pressure. So brand new whole systems, and we were able to fix all the properties. And it took a little while, but my wife and I at that point, we got married in 2008. At this point, we were broke because we were renovating another property. We were living paycheck to paycheck. Um, but because of that, we were able to build. Once the property got up and running, the equity started to build. And the property was building so much even before that, we were able to pull equity from this property. We bought our matrimonial home. So when people saw that, they come into work, I'm like, you're 26 years old or 27 years old. Like, how are you able to afford two homes on your salary? I'm like, and again, it wasn't the salary. It was the equity of the homes. We pulled the equity, we were able to buy another property and able to buy another property. And that's kind of what we did. And then we did this before the fire, right? But then obviously the fire came. So when people saw that and were able to satisfy them, we were able to purchase properties, and then we bought enough. We lived in their one home, had the Sixplex, and then everything was up because we renovated both of them. And then so the equity built because now the value went up. And then after 2008, both value went up. In 2011, we bought a third property, which we moved into, turn our matrimonial home into a rental property. So I was showing people how to do this. Like, listen, my dad always said, unless you need to sell a property, don't sell it. You can turn it into an investment property. So nowadays, what I try to get people to do is, like, I use that as an example. And from this now, at this point, we own our matrimonial home, so we're in a bigger home now. We sold that one little bungalow, our old matrimonial, but we have the Sixplex and we have 4 condos. And with my mom's portfolio, we are going to eventually take over 3 of her commercial properties by not using our own money. It's called OPM, right? Other people's money. Mm-hmm. So because if you borrow the money, the debt you're able to write off of your income. It's never your own cash. It's all about cash flow. So I use our tail. It's not a cautionary tale. It's like, this is what you can do. So when I talk to young couples, and I say, they're always looking. The problem we're finding now is that in this type of, I guess, new environment, people are looking online. They're seeing these beautiful homes. They're like, oh, when I buy a home, they have all these dreams. They want to get into their dream home. I'm like, you're 27, 40, 35 years old. You've never bought a house before. I'm like, the bank's not going to give you the money. Like, unless you're some anomaly, you're not going to be able to purchase this gorgeous property. You need to start like we did. Like, you build your properties. You start low. You get into a condo that you can afford and let it build on it, or like a townhouse or something affordable. If you're able to get into a bungalow and rent out the basement while you live upstairs, that helps pay for your mortgage. And then when the value of the property goes out, you can pull that and now turn into an investment property and then move into another home to upgrade. And if you can do that a few times, then that's how you can build your home without really risk. There is obviously risk, but it's less risky with real estate. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to quit your corporate job. You don't have to quit your day-to-day. You can do this as passive income on the side. And that's how I started explaining people to do that. And it's like, it does take time. It's not going to be overnight. And then you have to have the patience for it and make right decisions. Obviously getting good tenants, and there's ways we help them get tenants as well. Like there's new checking the systems that we check to help verify anybody's coming in, because we were getting burned here in Toronto big time for like all these tenants. And our rules here in Ontario really favor the tenants, not the landlords. So somebody can squat for like years and not pay anything, and the landlord is forced to pay that. So there's other new tools we found that which really help to decipher the person is exactly what they say they are, if they are a good tenant. Anyway, long story short, that's how we started the process, right? We sit them down and I'm like, and some people say, I don't want to be a landlord. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But if you want to be able to build equity, your home will earn more equity than you can ever do by working. That's how fast our market's been growing. Our market's been growing in the last 30 years, 6.3 to 6.8% per annum compounded. So and that's, again, it sounds small because, I make an investment property. And if I buy stocks, I can get 10 to 15%. When you're purchasing a property, you're only putting, in some cases here, under 1.5%, you're only putting 10% down. So you might buy a property for 1.5. You're getting 6.8% on 1.5, not the 10% you put down, which is say $150,000. So once people get that in the mentality, like, yeah, so it's like it's passively increasing, increasing. You got to change your mentality of what an asset is and liability. Currently, when you're living in your home, it is a liability, not an asset, until you turn it into a way to make money. And if you have the mentality like that, like this is a stepping stone, we need to treat it like an investment. Right now, it's a liability. We're going to be putting money into to eventually to gain on it. That's how you could start to win. Is in this kind of game.
Are you looking to get started or scale in real estate investing but don't know your next step? Are you overwhelmed thinking about finding deals, analyzing deals, doing due diligence, and managing properties on top of it? Go ahead and push the easy button and invest with us. Real estate investing is what we do full time. We've done dozens of deals with hundreds of doors. We have the knowledge and experience to handpick the best deals that most investors can't find. We vet large off-market deals all the time where you can hopefully find returns and economies of scale that you just can't find on your own. The best thing is it's 100% passive to you for less capital than you put down trying to acquire a property on your own. Don't let this year go by where you don't make the leap, add to your portfolio, or you just sit in analysis by paralysis. To find out more, visit freedomthroughrealestate.com and click on invest. You can book a call and learn more there. So get to scaling your portfolio now with us by your side. That's freedomthroughrealestate.com and click on invest. Yeah, that's a great process, and something that, we bought right as the market was crashing here in 2006, 2007. And I was like, shoot, we're going to be underwater on this townhouse for the next 10 years. Or we can turn it into a rental property. We bought a short sale, fixed up that short sale, and then took the proceeds from that and bought another property and just started to build. And yeah, you're right. It takes time. And then we used a home equity line of credit to launch a business that we ran on the side that ended up not working out. However, it showed how the asset of your home and that equity that's gained can really give you some more, I guess, ammunition to take some risks in life. And now I do it full time. So so I can take more risks now. But yeah, it does show that, those few steps early on. People ask me, advice for getting started in real estate. And I tell people, like, if you're interested in buying a home, renting it out, right? Like if you're right out of college or young, whatever that might be, or buy a multifamily that you can live in one unit. Like, those are the easy ways. Now, it's not a fit for everybody, and it's not going to work for everybody's style or their life and what they're doing. But those are some of those easy things that can really give you a head start later on down.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, like you said, it's like it's not a level of, like, we've seen people with no education. It's not like it's simple. Like, but I always say, like, if you're going to be, it's simple math. You got to be able to run some simple numbers. What I don't like was what happened here is we had a pre-construction. You guys have pre-construction, I'm assuming, as well, right? Buying the properties off of plans. And the market was going so hot for so long that people were paying ridiculous prices, like $1,700, $1,800 a square foot for properties downtown core. Like, there were studio apartments. It was ridiculous because the properties kept going up in value, right? You're buying these things, 4 to 6 years, 7 years out. And if the value continues to increase, you're okay. Or at least when they go to close on the property, the value is, if not on par or above of what you purchased. And that was the idea. But we had a market crash, which kind of currently having like a market, like a condo market. I would say not a crash, but it's pretty hard to sell condos right now. There's a lot of inventory. So now we're noticing those people that paid that $1,700 square foot, when they're going to close on it, the bank's looking at it, and they're giving a market valuation. Like, I know you paid X amount of dollars, like $900,000 for this property, but our valuation is only at $650. So either you come up with the difference of the $250,000, or you're going to lose the property and you're going to get sued. And that's happening a lot, right? That's how there's people in our market right now that are on the news. This one guy took out a $300,000 mortgage, like basically line of credit, so that he didn't get sued. So he sold the property for $300,000 less than he had paid, just so he didn't go into bankruptcy. So he's literally got a $300,000 mortgge. He's paying interest on it and has nothing to show for it. He's bought nothing with it. And that's a cautionary tale, right? That can happen, right? That's what I'm saying. It's not the sense of not having risk. But if you know anything here in Toronto market, it's like, as long as you hold on to a property for like a long period of time, extended period of time, we're talking 10 years, 15 years, it will grow. So even some right now we're having, our market is like, last year we had the slowest market we've had ever, pretty much per capita, like the slowest market on number with the intrinsic number for like 25 years. But if you look at per capita, it's the slowest market since the inception of the MLS system here, which basically means it's the last 30, 40 years, the slowest market we've had. But there aren't people still selling their property for, say, like $1 million, $1.5 million that paid $70,000 for this property, right? So they're still like saying, I don't care, like, sure, we're down a little bit, but I'm still making bank on it. There are those still people, those, like a lot of the boomers, the baby boomers, they're seeing that, right? It's the people that were maybe bought the highest of the market, which is 2021, and the height of our market was February 2022, where our average sale price in Toronto was $1.33 million. Well, fast forward to last month, average price dropped to $1.9 million. So that's $324,000 less on average. It's a big drop, right? It's a big drop. So we're seeing people like that are having those problems. So our advice always to them is like twofold. Is like, one, if you don't have to sell, if this is your only property, you don't have to sell, don't hold on to it. Like if the bank is not foreclosing on you, if you're not worried about mortgage payments, you don't have to sell, and you can hold on to it, and you can weather the storm. The market will rebound. We just don't know when. So it's hold on to the assets so you don't get bankrupt. The second thing I always say to people is like, well, now is a great opportunity to upsize, right? So that property you would have paid, for example, for $1.3 million 2 years, and now it's down to $1 million. Well, sure, you might be losing on the sale of your home, like losing on the sale because you might but you're gaining much more because now you're upsizing at a much lower price. And it'll be much faster to pay off that $1 million mortgage as it would be a $1.3 million mortgage. And the interest rates right now have dropped to the lowest they've been since the pandemic. So there's a lot of upsides if you're looking to upsize. So unless you need to sell, don't sell. That's our advice. We're here to help people and to guide people. Now, unfortunately, I have a number of clients that their family members, their parents have passed away, and they said, we need to sell. We don't want to carry this property. We don't want to rent it out. Okay, that's also a situation like you can sell it, and it is what it is, and that's happening a lot too. So I have like 3 or 4 of those sales right now.
Yeah, I think it takes time to gain wealth in real estate, and you can buy real estate and wait. And same for us. When we bought when the market tanked, we ended up holding that property for 15 years, but we sold it, we made money on it, and had a good story to tell at the end of the day when it could have been, foreclosure or something like that. It's why we need great agents that can help people and walk through those steps. David, thank you so much. I know there's so much more we can cover. For people that want to reach out to you, learn more about you, get help from you, how can they do so?
Well, the probably easiest way is to go through my Instagram, because even on my Instagram, I have a what's called the link tree, which links me to all my YouTube and everything else. So my Instagram is my name. It's David V. Cinelli, Cinelli _realtor. And you should be able, that's my handle. So David, V as in Victor. Oh, my middle name is Vincent, but I say Victor, I don't know why. And then Cinelli _realtor. And then, that'll lead you there, and you can take a look at my Instagram. There's a lot of educational advice I do there too. I also like to showcase, obviously, my family and things we're doing. We want to just show some of the things we do. But right now it's a busy time. So unfortunately, there is a lot of houses we're posting, but I do like to spice up and add some of my activities in there as well. So you get to learn a little bit more about me, not just, I always tell people when they're doing Instagram or they're doing some sort of social media, you don't want to just put houses up there. People get bored of that. They want to know who you are and your personality. Right now, our Blue Jays are doing very well. So we're excited about the Jays this year. And my wife and I went to the opening game, and we're going to be watching it. We're flying to Milwaukee in a couple of weeks for my birthday, and going to watch the Jays there. We got some more games lined up. We don't talk about the Leafs, and I don't talk too much about my Green Bay Packers right now either. So, but yeah, follow me there and DM. I actually do. It's either me or my assistant. My assistant doesn't answer my DMs. I answer my DMs, and I do answer everybody. So it might take me. Most of the time I answer fairly quickly, but if you don't see me answer right away, that's probably because I haven't been on, or my phone's off. So, but yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. If you're listening, certainly check out his Instagram. And David, thank you so much for the time and the investment and all the wisdom that you've given us.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.